Hi there, my name is Dr. Emma Svanberg and I'm a clinical psychologist working with parents and parents-to-be. One of the topics that comes up a lot in my work with parents is how do we deal with anger? Sometimes the levels of anger that we can experience as parents can feel quite shocking. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions to help you really get to the bottom of where your anger is coming from. By understanding where our anger comes from, we can start to figure out strategies that can help us become calmer, more grounded parents. Firstly, it's an obvious question, but it's one that we don't really ask ourselves very often. Where is our anger coming from? Anger is usually a sign of an unmet need. Now, often that need can be really simple and basic, but it can be really hard to determine how we're actually doing if we're not checking in with ourselves. Are we actually just exhausted? Often our anger, irritability, frustration can come from being sleep deprived, or maybe we're not eating regularly enough and that irritation is coming from a low blood sugar. So are we meeting those really basic physical essential needs? Perhaps our anger is coming from something that we feel our child is doing that is causing us stress. More on that in just a moment. Or sometimes our anger is coming from something from our own history. Understanding where our anger is coming from is our first step in being able to resolve it and find strategies to help us become calmer. If our anger is coming from something that we feel our child is doing, something that is causing us stress, it can be really helpful to understand those very automatic stress responses in our bodies. When we are faced with something that we perceive as a threat, we can very automatically respond with fight, flight, or freeze. Anger is often our fight response kicking in to a perceived threat. So then we have to ask ourselves, what is our threat? What is it that we feel that we have to fight? Sometimes our fight response is actually very appropriate. For example, if our child is running into the road, then we might need to shout loudly and get their attention in order to get them to safety. So that would be a really appropriate use of our threat response. But at other times, it's more of a perceived threat. So this might be more like a threat to our perceived sense of control as a parent. It might be a threat to our fantasies of what family life is supposed to be like, or even a threat to our expectations of that day or that moment. Understanding where that threat is coming from, even if it's very abstract, can help us find new strategies to dampen down that fight response. Sometimes anger can come to us from our own earlier experiences that can get triggered in these highly charged, stressful parenting moments. So one really common example of that is that when we've been shouted at a lot as children, when we're feeling stressed ourselves, we can very automatically find our parents' voice just coming out of our mouths. So this is a really automatic response, which is based very much in the relationship patterns that we experienced ourselves. This can then be exacerbated because if we don't want to be repeating those cycles, then we can feel quite guilty or ashamed about shouting, which can actually, unfortunately, raise our stress response and make it more likely that we're going to end up shouting again. If anger and shouting are familiar responses for you, and you don't want them to be, then it is possible to change our ways of responding. That might be through self-help, it might be through mindfulness or finding other ways of discharging that stressful energy, or you might want to try speaking to a professional like a therapist like me. I hope you found these questions thought-provoking and maybe they'll take you on a path to finding some new strategies. If you'd like to find out more information about this or other topics related to your parenting journey, then please do visit my baby club for more information.